Welcome to the SMW podcast. This is where warriors share their stories and their knowledge on the art of Steel Mace training. This month's podcast sponsor is White Lion Athletics. We'd like to thank you for providing our listeners better listening experience. To check out White Lion Athletics, go to www.whitelionathletics.com. What is up, warriors? So before we get started on this bonus podcast episode with Queen Gypsy, yeah, that's what I call her over there at Steel Mace Flow, I want to let you know about all the new merchandise and the Steel Mace Warrior online store, okay? So if you've been wanting to support this podcast, but you didn't know how, now's your chance. There's a t-shirt for everyone there, okay? There's a t-shirt on the Great Gamma, okay? If you're a traditional swinger, you know what I'm talking about. There's a t-shirt inspired by the 80s, She Mace, okay, for the ladies. There's The Mace Chose Me, so if you feel like the mace chose you, why don't you go buy yourself that t-shirt and rock it out while you're swinging or flowing or whatever you do with that mace. All right. So anyways, I hope you enjoy this bonus podcast. I thought that it was a perfect podcast to end the Warrior Woman Month. Okay. So let's do this. Let's check that out. What's up, Steel Mace Warriors? Here we are, another podcast episode, but I have a returning guest. And I'm super excited because I missed you in February, by the way. I was like so pumped, and then I know you got super busy. So we'll talk a little bit about that because I have a feeling I know why you were busy. But anyways, say hello to Steel Mace Gypsy. Welcome.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Thank you so much for having me. This has been a long time coming. It's been a minute.
It's been, okay, so I have it here. The last podcast was on April 3rd, 2018.
Oh my gosh,
that was a while ago.
It was a while ago. That was right before I moved to Austin.
There you go.
From New Mexico. Mm-hmm.
Fuck, that was. I feel like it was like ages ago. So it's really cool to have you back on here. And I've seen you grow. Oh my god! Like I was just telling you before the podcast, I was like, you look fucking great.
Thank you. It's like glow up. No, there's a lot to be said when you go through a lot of change and you go through a lot of growth. I mean, not to say that I wasn't comfortable with who I was when we first spoke. But if anything, I'm even more so. Like I've grown into myself. I've learned a lot about myself, and I fucking love myself. That's a huge deal.
That's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, I got that kind of glow. I got them I love myself glow vibes.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, I can feel it. Okay, so in the last episode, we talked a little bit about your story, right? So can we kind of like summarize it? And if they want to hear the whole story, they can just go back to that old podcast episode, but kind of just summarize what got you into Steel Mace.
What got me into Steel Mace? Well, it's funny as I can add on to that story a lot more now, just looking back. But the short version of it was something that allowed me to, kind of culminate and create with all of my background, being the warrior expression vibes, when I've had a bad day, this is the tool that I get to go to instead of going to drinking or to partying. One of my girlfriends was the one who was like, hey, come to this class, try this mace class with Coach Leo. We both took kickboxing classes from Leo. So that's how I knew of him. And the minute I picked up a mace, I mean, shit changed, and needless to say, it's changed a lot over the last 3 to 4 years. But in a nutshell, it was the first time I picked something up fitness wise that I could be a true warrior with and be in my imagination world in reality. Like I didn't have to pretend that I was a warrior with a mace. I am a fucking warrior. I am this all powerful being with a mace in my hand. So
wow, what a great fucking answer. I was just kind of like, oh yeah. It's cool that you bring that up because I've been reading a lot of Toltec books, and they talk about how we are actually dreaming. So I think maybe you woke up and you're in your dream now.
Like seriously, I see how excited I got about it.
Yeah.
yeah, there's this, I mean, I grew up living in my imagination. So this is really special for me to say this on the podcast. This is the first time I'm saying this, I think, on a podcast. My backstory really is something that I've grappled with for the last 3 years. When you move to a new state, a lot can change. You know, I grew up in New Mexico, so there was a certain way of how things went and operated, and I was surrounded by family, so on and so forth. And I think what I did was I popped a hole in this illusion that I was living in. I grew up in a cult. And when I moved to Austin, that was like a big severance for me. And at that point in time, I hadn't truly acknowledged what had happened in my past. It was like subconsciously, my brain, my body was making the decisions for me to save me. So I truly believe that deep, my soul was saying, get the hell out of here, dude. Like, you are not going to be able to live as yourself unless you make these separations. So that process was, over the last 3 years has been pretty tough, you know, especially when you don't necessarily know everything that's going on, right? Like, I was going through all this turmoil in my present life, in relationship, in work, and being in a new city, and being in a industry where, let's be honest, a lot of people focus on looks and how we present ourselves. And Austin's a wonderful city, that allows for many different people. They're very open and curious. But, you know, coming into the Onnit scene was pretty intimidating, coming from a small town, being a country girl, and going, holy crap, that chick's a model. And I've seen her on Instagram, and I've seen her on the cover of magazine, and we're working out together.
Yeah.
You know, and so there was a lot of like, just having a lot of my beliefs challenged as well, and figuring out that some of those things that I grew up believing were never my beliefs. They were somebody else's that was placed upon me. And you know, so when you talk about waking up, yeah, I've had a big wake up. I've had a huge awakening, and I've shed a lot of things. You know, and it wasn't pretty either. And I wasn't necessarily the nicest or best person to be around, because a lot of this I was so terrified to say or even try to explain to people. And this is my first, you know, initial like stab at talking about it, because it needs to be talked about. Some people need to understand that, hey, you go through things that are really weird or crazy in life, and you are going to get to a point where you don't necessarily have to talk about it to the public like I am, but you're going to get to a point where things are going to be okay. And as cliche as it sounds, keep freaking going, even when you don't want to, even when you're like, my head is wanting to explode with all this depression, all this anxiety, like, just make it end. Keep going, because those are the steps. Like, you just got to keep like throwing out the mud, essentially. And you know, the mace was involved in all of this. All the while, all of this chaos is raining down in my head and in my heart. And I'm going to workshops, I'm traveling, I'm teaching classes, I'm working on my own education. And it's, in a lot of ways, it feels like I was living a double life, maybe even a triple life in some senses. There was just these layers upon layers. And, you know, throughout all of that, there was the mace. But there were several times where I put the mace down. Number one, because I didn't think I was worthy enough to pick it up anymore. How poetic. A warrior is not worthy to wield her mace. But at the end of the day, you know, especially this year and last year, of course, there were some big moments in all of these shifts for me. Just like everybody else, COVID affected me in many ways. And I choose to, of course, take the blessings from it, because I know it could have been a heck of a lot worse. And I sat with my shit. Really, it was just the point blank what happened. And I was like, look, dude, you got to get real with yourself. You're spinning in a circle, and it's affecting every little aspect of your life. Like, aren't you freaking tired of this ruling your life? And aren't you tired of this ruling now? Now it's overtaking the thing that you moved for, the thing that you love the most, which is Steel Mace Flow, your practice, your saving, like, movement and meditation and movement type of thing. And it was pretty hilarious. Like, this little voice, it's me in my head, like, yelling at me. But for the first time, it's not saying you suck. It's like, dude, come on, you know you're better than this. What the hell? Like, I have a
That's
great
beautiful.
I have a great inner dialogue. And so, yeah, awakening. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but
No, that's awesome.
Awakening is a huge fucking word for me, because so many people go through like, oh, I'm starting over, or I'm rebirthed, or this or that, and so on. And I think that's beautiful. I'm not knocking it, but for me, the first thing I identify with to help me is like, I'm not choosing to step over any part of my life or say that I am stepping away from that. Like, that built the foundation of who I am. And that story is so important to who I am now. And the thing I think we do a lot of is we want to get away from pain, and we want to get away from the shame. You got to feel it.
Yeah.
That's how you start getting through that shit, is like acknowledging, yep, I did that. I hurt a lot of people in my process of healing. Surprise, surprise. And what's the saying? Hurt people, and it's shitty too. And I can kind of joke about it. I'm not joking about it if I have that like tone in my voice, but you know, it's acknowledging it and sitting there and allowing yourself to feel that pain, because you're not feeling your pain, you're feeling the pain of what you caused people around you. And that's the shittiest part, you know. So, and my mace was a big part of working through that, learning how to communicate it, learning how to humble myself, and learning how to say, I'm sorry, and I'm moving on. Because you have to move on at some point too.
So you feel like you moved on, like, or do you still feel like you're constantly like still dealing with all the healing process? Because I feel like it's an ongoing thing, but what's your thought on that?
I've had this conversation with myself. You know, I was thinking about it the other day. We focus so much on this word healing. And I remember telling, you know, my partner, who experienced a lot of like my backlash, and in a lot of cases it wasn't deserved, but because I wasn't speaking up for what I needed from him. And I just remember promising, like, I'm healing, I'm gonna be better, I'm gonna do better, I'm gonna you know, control my anger and this, that, and the other. And you know, thinking back to it, it's like, I can't fucking promise to control my emotions. I'm human. Every human is gonna reach his points where something just like, you know, it either explodes or it comes out in a certain way. But there's this word that comes to in my mind before healing, because you can heal, absolutely. Yeah. Healing to me is you're able to recognize when things start to pop up that are maybe an old pattern, and you say, no, I'm going this way, or I know what to do about this. That what comes before is the part I think a lot of people miss out on, and it's recovery. First off, you have to acknowledge the shit that happened to you and say, yeah, it sucked. And the moment for me that acknowledgement, I had to go through a grieving process. I had to go through an understanding process. For me, I was heavily manipulated and brainwashed. I've been in this cult since I was born. You know, they got a hold of my mom, and then they had me, and they slowly started to discard my mom and to separate us. And so I was heavily inundated with a lot of things that really took a toll on my self-worth and my ability to feel loved. And so I had to grieve all of that, and grieve the fact that I lost that. In a way, I felt like I lost my family, because at the end of the day, no matter all of the horrible things that they did to me, those people were my family. I grew up with them. I loved them. They had kids, and those kids were basically like my brothers. So there was a lot of inner chaos. And then there's the recovery period. And why I say recovery is, you think about it like an addiction, right? And so an addiction forms a pattern and forms a need in your body as well. And there's physical responses to it. You have these cravings. And for me, it was really understanding that there was a lot of patterns and a lot of stories running that weren't mine, but my brain needed them to function. My brain was like, no, we can't do that thing where we actually talk to people. This is what we do. We have to go and hide everything. You know, like even my habits with food. I used to sneak food into my room because I was only allowed to have so many things. So at night I would go and sneak and hide. And I remember if I leave like at least just one cookie or two cookies here, they won't notice it's gone, because you could never eat the last little bit of food or whatever, just as an example here. And so even now I see myself like going to my own fucking pantry and being like, oh God, I hope my roommate doesn't come out and see me sneak. I'm like, oh wow, I'm still doing these things. So this recovery period, absolutely. I 110% believe that you can get to that point where it's like you're functioning. And that's where I'm at now. So I'm basically, the last 3 years was like the recovery period, and learning a lot about myself and learning where not to go, or what, buttons necessarily to say, hey, that is a trigger. I shouldn't put myself in these types of situations, and learning, or not yet. Right. Because as a human, you're always, this is why I think with identity is so crucial to say I'm a human, because if you look up the definition of human, we're fallible. We all make mistakes, but we all can grow and learn from those mistakes and not make those mistakes again. So you're a living organism, and you're constantly going to shift and evolve. How do you want to do it? And so why I say not yet to certain things is because maybe you will be able to handle them in the future. I'm a big advocate for mental health, and I've started to get a lot more involved in my community in that aspect, not just in the Mace community, but here in general in Austin, and just paying attention to other artists out there that are doing similar things, like Demi Lovato. I had no idea Demi Lovato's story growing up. She was addicted to cocaine, she was an alcoholic, and she had an eating disorder, I think by the time she was 14, 15. So she went through a lot, and she actually relapsed 2 years ago. And, to see someone like Demi, who has it all together and has this immense talent, like the voice that she has is unlike any other. It really inspired me to start talking about my story and talking more about how I use the Steel Mace in a way that's a positive outlet. And also recognizing that, for all of the sad stuff we have to flow about, there's so many joyful things that you get to flow about. And that's where I'm focusing now too, is recognizing and choosing to celebrate these wins in flow. Our level 2 program really hits home when it comes to emotions and expression, right? And so we teach you the education of how to safely do the movements, how to progress with them, or how to regress. But also we give you so much more in the mentorship with Leo. Each movement has a meaning, right? So the 360 represents love, because essentially you're drawing this heart around yourself. And so what happens when you have like 4 different movements and you write out the meanings of them, or what they mean in the system, and then also what do they mean to you? You get to write out these stories. I've been actually playing. Yeah. So it's like, it's journaling in all the ways that it's very cathartic. Is that the word?
You've done this before on the show, and I'm just like, I don't fucking know. I swear you did this too in the last episode. I'm like, I'm just gonna let you have it.
Sure. Somebody out there will correct me. Oh my gosh. It's fine. It's fine. But so I've been playing with this process of, normally I have an emotion, or I have a song or nature that inspires me. And I've been paying attention more to my free flow. I don't know if you all know this, but I'm obsessed with watching game footage of myself and other Steel Mace Flow artists. Like, and this is something that Leo and I have actually talked about. Like, we would go and film. We do our free flows and do our routines, and then we'd go home and we just sit there and like watch all of the movements and be like, oh, did you see that? Okay, what is that? And like see where we could improve and stuff. But now what I do is I add on to that. And I write down the movements, and I ask myself, okay, well, what do these movements mean? And then what is my body and my soul trying to tell me in free flow? So instead of creating the story, I'm seeing what my body is actually speaking to me. So, because in free flow, you're just allowing the body to push and pull, and there's these different movement patterns that come up for you. Everyone has what I like to call their expression pattern or a pattern that they constantly go back to. Like for me, it's a lot of circular movements. So I like mills, I like scoops and these under switches and circling and sword swings. And so when you get to start to analyze that, it's like, what's my body telling me here? And it's been a really interesting process because one came up that I translated last week, and it was over communication and boundaries. And I was like, fuck, that's what I'm working on right now. Thanks, body. And so it's like, okay, all right. And so, just when you look at your Steel Mace practice or your Steel Mace flow practice in particular, because this is the realm that we tend to focus in, is movement and emotion and expression. It can be limitless, and who knows, maybe you could do that with a dumbbell. Maybe people I'm sure do that with yoga and animal flow, and your flow state doesn't have to be in one simple little square of a box. I find it in everyday life, and I actually use the idea of flux and flow in life. So yeah, that's my really long-winded version of saying how freaking yes, you can heal and you've got this.
Well, I love that you went into the Steel Mace Flow, the level 2 stuff, because listening to it, I feel like, because I remember watching you guys on Instagram when I first started my journey. And I just remember looking at everyone, and at the beginning, I felt like everyone was trying to be Leo. And now I feel like Steel Mace Flow has evolved to a point where everyone looks so unique. I'm starting to see everyone kind of express themselves more, and I think it's the level 2. You guys have been doing a great job with that.
Thank you. No, that means a lot. That means a lot coming from you. Because sometimes when you're so centrated in it, it can be hard to see if that is being translated, or if the work is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and even your flows, I'm always like, when I watch yours, it looks like Serena. It looks like Steel Mace Gypsy, and I love that. I love to see that unique aspect to the flows,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Leo is definitely Leo's the root of it, of course, because he's created Steel Mace Flow. But yeah, and I think everyone goes through their period of time where they look like their coach. Now what you see though is, he is the root, and then there's these branches, like you have me, you have Frankenlegs, you have Jeffrey Oaks, you have Jamie Pinto, and all of us learned from him essentially, or just, when it was a lot smaller, just watched his Instagram. And so that's all we had. And then, yeah, you give a practice a couple of years to expand and grow. And then you find these people that are so freaking passionate about it, that come together and say, hey, well, what about this? And what about this? And all of a sudden it's like, it's turned to this, this tree into this DNA strand. And so it's all of the collectively the same, rooted foundation, but now it has this life to, be unique. And, it's a beautiful thing to see. We talk about the lineage of Steel Mace Flow and honoring that lineage. And it's something that's very important to us, because you can typically trace back and you can see the little nuances in someone's flow. Be like, oh yeah, I know where you learned that. Like you learned from Frankenlegs. So that's kind of like Frank's thing. But then again, yeah, it's transcending and it's different, because we teach our students to flow with who they are. Like, of course, there's the aspect of, hey, yeah, I want you to tap into what it feels like to flow like me. It's like, it's easy for me to tap into and flow like Leo, because I've been with him on this journey for so long, and he was, of course, like my direct coach. And then I did definitely begin experimenting with the practice of, hey, well, what do I look like outside of this? Like, I started to become a little bit more empowered and saying, well, I am going to flick my wrist and like find a very ballet poetic type of pose. So it allowed me to explore femininity. It allowed me to explore the masculinity and primalness, and also just neutrality of being neither or. I think a lot of times we focus so much on, I have to be this type of way, or I have to be this type of way. Well, what happens when there are no lines, there are no, spaces of this, I have to be over here or here, just being in the center of it all and just moving with pure energy. It's a beautiful thing. And sounds a little woo-woo, but at the same time, like, that's my job to explore these realms that nobody else wants to go into. As a coach and as somebody that's an advocate for this practice and for pushing the boundary, yeah, I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing for myself and for this tribe as a whole.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. I can see it. I can see it all happening. I'm telling you, I've seen it evolve over the years. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, so let's talk about your program. Let's talk about this program that just got out. I bought it and it's fucking awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I watched the first couple of videos. I still gotta get into it. I've been so fucking busy, but I'm gonna get to it. I promise, and I'll post some videos.
I feel you.
Yes. So let's talk about your program. So I know, when did you release this? Last month?
Yeah, I actually released it on my birthday.
Yeah. Well, happy belated fucking birthday. No fucking idea. Did I say happy birthday? Unless it pops on Facebook, I won't know about it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was choosing to rewrite my story with my birthday because typically people do forget, or it's always been a really shitty time for me. Oh. And it almost ended up having that same storyline of being a really terrible birthday. And I was like, you know
what? Fuck that.
Yeah, we are 29 this year. We are not doing that. So what part of that was, I'm going to make this always joyous for me and just make it an anniversary for something. And so I was like, this is the perfect day for me to release my program, because it's my first. It's even if it sold bad, I was like, I don't care. It's something to rejoice in. So rejoiced in my birth, and rejoiced in the release of my program.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I'm doing hand movements today and I haven't even had coffee. Who am I?
Oh, good. That's your natural energy.
Oh yeah, I've got so much. But the program itself, when I first approached the idea of making a program, this is something that Leo and I had talked about. I was like, I'm gonna do a workout. I'm gonna do a workout series, and that's still on the table to do. But he was like, you should give the people more of you. And I was like, no, like I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna create flows and stuff. Like, I don't want people to think like, I'm trying to, steal SMF education. And he was like, no, like, this isn't you creating education. This is you creating flows and putting yourself out there and giving them like who you are. And that's what's special, is who you are and how you flow. And I was like, well, all right. and I think a part of it too was I had never really taken the time to break down my own free flows, and just really sit there and think about, also making them right side and left side, and just making them to where people could follow along. And also, how the hell am I supposed to teach people or describe it when I flip a mace over my shoulder, and it's this really weird bendy move that I know a lot of people can't do, but I can do it because I've practiced it. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah. So I had a couple months. I think I had like 2 months to figure this out. And my process of creation, I'm like any artist, I just like ignore it in those senses, and think about it and then stress about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know what, we're going to just take some time to freaking create, and it'll start blooming, which it did, And what was interesting was I wasn't necessarily focused on a theme for the series. But if you look at the series, a lot of the titles are based around the moon and then Gypsy. And the moon's always been a big draw for me because of like these changing of phases, and we'll go back to that attachment to femininity, because I've had trouble connecting to my feminine side. I've always been like, I'm the tough Viking warrior-esque type of thing. And it's like, yes, but you're also this soft, vulnerable creature that like needs love and is a very powerful force in that. So each flow that came about started having a story, and I just focused really on the feelings that I had during those flows. Like, there's one called Mother Dragon, and
love that one.
Yeah, I
love that one too. That's the one that I actually tried, like, out of the box. I was like, that one sounds so cool, and then I saw it and I was like, yeah, I'm doing this one.
Hell yes. And it's really simple, and some of them are simple, some of them are a little bit more complex, but they also feed into each other too, which is awesome because you really start to get reps and reps on certain movements. So it's like I'm sneaking it in there of like, hey, you're going to focus on your sword cradle or your crescent swing. And there was also, that was a big movement in the series, was a lot of like sword swings. And there's one called a crescent swing, which is essentially you're sending the mace head across and the tail follows and you switch and you're doing these redirects. And I love that. I love those steps where you are pivoting and pushing off of and pushing and pulling your energy. Like I'm really good at in free flow. If I'm going to fall, I'm really good at falling into the step and making it look like it's supposed to happen into the step. Like there's been a couple of times where I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna trip over a rock, and it's like, oh, forward fold into it and do some sort of flip or animal flow, just make it happen. That's also a part of free flow, but
oh yeah,
but this was a really cool process. It forced me to do the one thing that I hardly ever do, which is slow down.
Okay, I can see
it. And so it forced me in a sense to slow down and flow enough to where I really got to know my own flow patterns better, and I got to work on my coaching and upgrade my coaching, and it got me deeper into the philosophy and education of Steel Mace Flow, especially level 2, which is funny to say because it's like, well, Gypsy, you were in the frickin' series, how deep can you get into this education? As Leo would say, there's levels to this shit, and that's why there is no necessarily true mastery, or none that we have found yet with Steel Mace Flow, because even us who have been here since the beginning still find more and more and more out of the practice and deeper layers, whether it be the philosophy, whether it be the physical practice, whether it be mind, so on and so forth. Like you just keep learning. And now we've added on little things like journaling while we're doing our work in the mentorship. Like, just to toggle back real quick to talk about the level 2 mentorship, like no level 2 mentorship is ever the same. So you take yours the first time, you take it again, it's going to be different, and you're going to have different things pop up for you, and you're probably going to cry. Just so you know, I've been to in a good way. I'm
a big crybaby, so now I'm like, oh, great.
Listen, I love to cry. I love it. I love to cry. And what sounds silly to say that, because there were so many times where it's just like, damn it, I'm crying again and I can't hold it back. Like now it's just understanding, like, oh, release that shit, let it go, like feel it, like stop denying yourself these feelings. Like why do I need to hold back on my tears,
Yeah.
But like I've been through a couple of the mentorships. Like I took it for the very first time last year. I don't remember which month it was in, and then would pop in and out here and there in some of them. But I told myself, I was like, this year I'm rededicating to my own education. Like I want to upgrade myself as a coach. Not to say that I'm a bad coach at all, but fuck, the way I want to coach Steel Mace Flow and show up for my students and show up for myself requires me to be in the education. Like literally I wake up in the morning and I think about Steel Mace, and then at lunchtime it's still Steel Mace, and then it just, I think I laugh sometimes because it's like I can go a whole day, a whole week, and all I've really thought about in many different aspects is Steel Mace Flow. Whether it be from the online programs, to my own program, to classes, to online clients, to the community, to myself. It's a blessing. It's a freaking blessing that I get to live my dream, in the sense of like, I love what I do. And I even love answering emails because it's about Steel Mace Flow. This is a huge deal for me to come back onto the podcast, because we're revisiting, of course, a lot of things. And I was thinking back to the first time we did this podcast. I remember I was sitting in my mom's kitchen because I had just moved back in with her, and had really, really long hair, I think back then, which is coming back.
Yeah.
But it was just such a different time. And I'm still connected to that person, that girl that was sitting there in the kitchen. But oh my God, if I could tell her like all of the things I've been through, in the last few years, she would have been like, you're crazy. You're crazy. Like, that's ridiculous. But some of that's good, some of that's bad, and everything in between. And I'm really proud of myself, and I'm proud of my team, and I'm proud of the whole Mace community, the community as a whole too. Because if you think back of where we were at then, you know, not just Steel Mace Flow, but everybody has had this like come up and this growth. And, you know, there's been some bumps in the road along the way. And of course there will be, because again, we're human and we want to succeed and we want a lot of things. And sometimes we get overwhelmed with emotion and our own little like hiccups of traumas and things that get triggered. And of course people's, you know, buttons are going to be pushed. But at the end of the day, like, there are so many great education platforms out there. And there are so many wonderful coaches to learn from, that are pretty damn welcoming, you know. And it's a beautiful thing to see, because for a while there it was just like, oh, you want to swing some mace, huh? Okay, well, there's some things you need to know. There's a little bit of drama here and there. You know, and to be quite frank with it, you know, I've had some experiences with some students who have left, who have put down their Steel Mace because of things that they have experienced, or some of that tension between the kings of the Mace community, if you will, or and even the queens and stuff. And for me, going forward now is, you know, I have respect for everybody. And I always have, always will. But it's not my job to focus on what is going on out there in that sense. My job is to constantly keep an open space and that friendly aspect, that friendly vibe, because that's what our community is about as a whole, you know, is welcoming people in that Mace unity. I truly believe in that. And I want to support in the best way I can for any student. And, you know, maybe they don't start with flow with me and they want to learn about heavy swings, I know where to direct them. Or they want to do more conditioning work. If they don't want to do it with me, I know where to direct them. And that should speak volumes too of how much I believe in my own practice, to say that, yeah, I would refer a student to somebody else if I needed to. But at the end of the day, I'm so fucking well-rounded as a coach, because I choose to learn and choose to be open-minded, that if you need to, anything you need to learn, I'm probably going to be able to teach you, because that's how much I believe in myself. And that's how much I continue to be open in the community to learn and to grow, if that makes sense. So
total sense. Total fucking sense, man. I can't even start to tell you like how different you are now compared to that first episode. I'm telling you, like, right now you're just like, you're leaving me speechless. Your stuff is deep, man.
Right.
I'm serious. Like, I've had so many guests this month, and I think this was definitely that bonus episode. Now, okay, let's get into that bonus challenge before we freaking end this. Let's get into that bonus challenge. What is it, Gypsy?
All right. You know what? I had a better thought.
Okay.
For this bonus challenge, and we'll make it a little bit more Steel Mace Flow like. Instead of giving you moves, I want y'all to pick 3 moves, and I want you to make them into a flow. And I want you to ask yourself what those movements mean to you. And then I want you to post those movements together with some badass music. And then tell me in the caption, tell me and Ms. Victoria, tag us, what these movements mean to you.
Oh, fuck yeah. That was better than the original idea. Yes. We're getting to some level 2 shit here. Hell yeah. I'm about to join in too.
Yes.
I'm not going to win shit, but I'm going to give out shit, but I'm going to do the flow. I'm going to put it together.
Oh my God, I love you. This is the best.
I love you too. Okay, so before we end this, words of encouragement for women, because like I told you, I'm going to we're recording right now, going to edit, going to release this tomorrow, because I want you to make it for Women's Month. You had to be in this month. Okay. So words of encouragement for women who are just picking up a Steel Mace, or maybe they're not confident in their Steel Mace flow.
Yeah. Number 1, be present. Be so fucking present in your journey, where you're at, that you leave no room for regret. And what I mean by that is, for myself personally, I miss my beginning days when it was just me and my mace, and my switch squats looked like crap, but they felt so freaking good because they were so new to me and so powerful. And I can still feel and smell the gym around me. But a lot of those steps were marred by, you suck and you should look like that person, and God, you can't even get your elbow drive in front of your face, yeah, be present, have fun with it. And all of those lines that you're so concerned about, or even being able to hold your mace, it's going to come with one thing: repetition. Actually, it's going to come with a couple of things: repetition, dedication, and a little bit of belief. Your belief doesn't have to be hundreds and hundreds of percents to freaking start. You can have 1% of belief in yourself, and that's going to end up manifesting into more with one rep at a time, one step at a time.
I'm going to add in one thing too. So that little voice you always talk about for the toe tick, that's called the parasite. So I'm going to add in, squash your fucking parasite. Squash that shit. Goodbye.
Bye. Yeah, we talk about that little voice in my class, and something I do, I'll do like a shavasana type of ending for my classes here in Austin. I teach for Black Swan Yoga. I teach hot Onnit, which is steel mace, body weight, and kettlebell. I call it a fitness dance party. It's so much fun. Like, we definitely work on getting your reps in, but also doing some flows and just getting into your body. And so in the shavasana of it all, ooh, you had a plane.
Yeah.
I was like, is this me? Is this me?
Forget it. They've been flying around all fucking day.
No, so what I do in the shavasana is I'll have them lay down, turn down all the lights, and I have them focus on their breathing. And I'm reading this book right now that's talking about breath work being like, the life force, like you're breathing out your life force, you're taking it in, so on and so forth. And I'll tell my students, what they'll be focusing on the breath, whatever no longer serves you, I want you to inhale all of that, like you're pulling it all out of your body, and then exhale, let that shit go. I say, blow it out, leave it on the floor, I'll sweep it out the door. That's like speaking to that little voice. And then I say, whatever you spent the last 60 minutes on your mat building, all that hard work, all that badassery, all of those good feelings, everything that you want to be, inhale that shit, exhale it, and breathe your freaking fire. Yeah. And you should hear like the change of it. You hear this just like, and it is so monumental. So breathe your fire, y'all. You deserve it.
Woo! Breathe your fire. All right. That was such a great way to end this episode. Okay, so where do people find you? Where, I guess the link to your program too, because I'm pretty sure people are going to want to look for that.
Yeah. The easiest way to find it is follow me on Instagram at Steel Mace Gypsy. The link to my website is going to be in the bio. It's just steelmacegypsy.thinkific.com, because I can't figure out how to get the Thinkific off yet. This is first world entrepreneur problems, y'all. It's fun.
It fucking happens.
It does happen. Yeah. And then the links are there too for Steel Mace Flow. If y'all want to check out the level 1 or level 2 programs, or if you have any questions, DM me. I can certify you in level 1 Steel Mace Flow, and I can teach you Steel Mace Flow level 2 moves. I just can't certify coaches yet because Gypsy is in her mentorship process to do so. So cheer me on, y'all.
Hell yeah. And I'm glad that you bring that up too, because you always have to stay a student, right?
Yeah.
Throughout your whole fucking journey. Don't think, don't block yourself up and think that you learned it all, because
listen y'all, and even just that, like, continue your learning. But sometimes I don't want to be a coach. I like being a student. It's fun. Remember that. After, don't get me wrong, I love everything that I do, and I am a queen for freaking sure, but I like it when I get to take that off and go be a student and get taught and just be me. So remember that too. It's fun to just be a student.
Be a student. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. As always, I'm so excited to release this episode. May the universe always flow with you, Steel Mace Gypsy.
And also with you.